Welcome to Making Sense of the Madness. We got a great show lined up for you today. We got Mark Schaftlein. We're going to be talking about the global economy and beyond. Then Zak Paine steps in. We're going to get into P Daddy Diddy, whatever it is, and much more. You're not going to want to miss it. Buckle up and get ready to make sense of the madness. And we are back. We are joined by Mark Schaftlein. Mark, always a pleasure to have you on. Always too long. Let's get into it global style. Let's start with China today. And there's this stimulus package coming up. Now, we've talked about the Chinese economy in reality over the last year or so, that it wasn't doing so hot. It was very much propped up. We've talked about the ghost cities. And quite frankly, whenever I hear stimulus, and this isn't a knock on China, I don't like the term. It usually just means we're going to print a lot of currency out of thin air, and then we're going to give it to our buddies, and dicka-dicka-doo, some magic's going to happen, and the economy is going to recover or even thrive in that situation. Now, that's probably like a fifth grader's version of it, but it's what I hear when I hear the term stimulus. So what's actually going on?
Well, you and I have talked about, first of all, thanks for having me back on. You and I have talked about this literally for about the last 6 months. The Chinese property market is a disaster. And what a lot of people don't realize is that in China, most of the citizens have their savings tied up in real estate, about 70% of it. So we've talked about the ghost cities, and boy, they are plenty of them. Property values are declining in China. So if you have 70% of your net worth tied up in the Chinese housing market, that spells a lot of trouble. What does that mean? It means that there's no way possible China can hit their targeted 5% growth rate. Now, that has global implications. I think we're actually already feeling it because in China, they're lowering the discount rate that the central bank charges by, again, familiar territory, 0.5 percentage point. The difference is there, it's going to bring it down to 1.5%, Jason. That's already a very low interest rate. So what's that going to do? It's going to, as you said, expand the money supply. It'll free up reserves that banks can now lend. Now, again, supply and demand, this is basic stuff, and that's why we've talked about it. When you grossly overbuild housing, which the Chinese did, there's literally condominiums, 40, 50, 60 stories high where there's nobody living in it. Okay, so if you then stimulate, what are you going to do? They're trying to increase the demand. Well, great. But if you have prices falling, that's not going to do a whole lot to stimulate demand. What it will do is stoke the inflation. And China's got a big problem right now. You and I have talked about the fact that the economic growth numbers that the government publishes, let's just say they're a little on the aggressive side, to be generous here. But, prices are now falling to a level where they were in 2021. So, you're having 3 years worth of gains wiped out. So stimulus is needed. They're taking the, quote, capitalist approach the Chinese Communist Party is. The problem they have is when it's government control, a la Comrade Kamala, it generally doesn't work. So China's up against it right now. And then here's the implications that I want some of your viewers and listeners to think about. There used to be an old saying, if the United States catches a cold, the rest of the world, or if the United States sneezes, the rest of the world catches the cold. You could tie that back to China now because of the close ties between American industrial companies and China. Look at how much Apple has invested there. Apple's a $3.5 trillion market cap company. So, and they're not the only ones. So Chinese government trying to do what they can now, but boy, they are up against it. And I'm not betting on the success here. When you have falling property values to try to prop them up, that doesn't work. The only way that this works is when you clear the old supply and then you can start, hopefully demand will pick up.
And I'd argue they've been in soft capitalism for a while now. I am worried about this because you're right, it does have global implications. And, throw you a little bit of a curveball. What does this mean in regards to the Fed cutting rates last week? That was a big cover story. We haven't covered that. It does seem like there is some type of correlation. You talk about, I guess we're the precursor to this announcement, but let's be honest with ourselves. Apple isn't the only one. Google isn't the only one. NVIDIA isn't the only one. You go down the line, and aside from, say, I don't know, the military industrial complex stocks that we're going to get into later, I'd say the top 15 are really multinational and very dependent on both of these economies, no? So what is your thoughts not only on that rate cut, but the timing of all this?
Well, the U.S. actually, Jason, was sort of the last to cut. They had reduced rates in Japan. England had already cut rates. Europe was cutting rates. So, a lot of people thought the Fed should have moved in July. Well, had they moved 25 basis points in July, the cut we got in September would have probably been 25 basis points. So my opinion was the Fed was way, way too aggressive. And the reasoning for that, inflation is still running 2.5% to 3%. Core CPE in this country was running 2.7, and that excludes volatile food and energy prices. Well, energy's come down, but the last I shopped, food is not, and it doesn't look like it is. Prices are elevated, and they're tending to stay there. But the Fed sees an opportunity here, and it's looking now, seeing an uptick in the unemployment rate. Why? Well, maybe your viewers will realize this. All these illegal immigrants that come into the country, they're counted in the workforce numbers. So it's no surprise to me that the unemployment rate ticked up to 4.4%. I believe it's significantly higher than that because every time they come out with these job numbers, Jason, they always end up reducing them by about 100,000 per month. My belief is that the economy is already on the edge of a recession. And again, we're going to talk about it later in the show. We talk about some of those stores that cater to low-income Americans. But my goodness, when people are cutting back to the bare minimums, and that's across a wide swath of the American public, the upper end's doing quite well, upper middle class are doing quite well, but 60% of the American public don't fit into that area, and they are struggling. So my belief is the Fed will continue cutting rates, and you're going to have a side benefit to that. The U.S. has a $35 trillion budget deficit. So when you cut the rates, you're going to cut the interest expenditures of the federal government.
Well, let's talk about those low-income households because this is my repertoire, if you will. Back in the day, when I would be going to a Walmart, there's usually a Dollar Tree or one of the real $1 stores. And oftentimes, I would stop there first, and I would get some of the essentials I could save 20, 30% on. Zatarain rice. Literally the same thing I would get next door, but much cheaper. I remember my nieces love black beans. 2 cans for $1. You couldn't beat the prices. Well, not so much anymore, and you really are seeing it. Now, it's not just me, but the dollar stores are no longer dollar stores. I often do not stop in these things anymore, even though they're connected to Walmart. I have been going to Aldi for years, but I'm a pretty frugal guy. I know what I can get a deal on Aldi and I can't compared to Walmart. I still have to go to there or Target or one of these other stores. The dollar store is kind of out of the mix for me. I even went there hunting for, glass screen protectors, which I usually get for the family for iPhones because they're dropping them all the time. I don't want to spend $10 a pop. They're literally the same exact one. Gone. It's all gone. And it's not even in the $3 or the $5 more section of these stores. The 99-cent store closed all of their stores last year. I think Dollar Tree is on their way out. And really that's because it's become more like the quote-unquote Family Dollar, which, if you're in the Family Dollar, you might as well be in a Walmart because you're not getting any deals there either. So is this the end of these type of stores? Or is there going to be some kind of, reformation, somebody stepping in, maybe a Walmart Junior or something like that, and that'll be the new revamp?
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned the store closures, and you're right. 99 cents closed all 371 stores they had. Uh, Family Dollar, they closed 600 stores. Dollar Tree is closing stores. And what's the common characteristic of these, Jason? They're in a lot of areas they built them specifically for low income areas, not moderate income or middle income, but low income areas. And you and I have talked about this. Inflation is like a scourge. I mean, as when we hit at one point 9% inflation a couple years back, and since the Biden-Harris administration came into power, prices are up almost 21%. They're not going back down. So if you're in lower income, you are literally struggling. I mean, you can't keep up with the inflation. Your wages aren't going up 21%. Now, people in the middle, they are getting sizable wage increases. Like, Boeing's negotiating a deal. Heck, they turned down a 4-year deal with a 25% increase. But a lot of places are getting these sizable wage gains, but not at the lower end of the food chain. And if your primary customer is running out of money, which is happening, and their credit card bills are already maxed out, what are you going to do? So look at the contrast to this. Some of those stocks, Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, their stocks are down 40 to 60% over the past year. Not Walmart. Walmart stock's near an all-time high. So I don't know. That does not look like a good business model to me. Now, if Trump is elected and we start drilling for more oil and re-engage natural gas and get the economy going again, yes, that could be the antidote for some of those stores as lower income Americans start gradually ramping up their income. But God forbid if Harris wins, then boy, you're going to have more of the same. It's going to be even worse.
We've also talked about the military industrial complex. 1 year anniversary of the October 7th attack is going to be probably the next time we talk. I mean,
yeah.
A lot of people thought it was going to be a campaign of a month, maybe 6 months at most. I never saw that. Now we're living in a world of exploding pagers. We're living in a world of maybe a ground war with Lebanon that I'm going to be discussing with Zak Paine later on in the program. Military-industrial complex is doing so great. This is the headline over at Forbes. Should you pick Northrop Grumman over Lockheed Martin? Why don't we throw Raytheon in there and maybe some Kellogg, Brown, and Root into the mix? They are all doing extremely well. And Let's be honest, even if Donald Trump steps in there, he's a big spender on defense. There's a lot of revamping of weaponry because of the age of AI alone and automation.
Right.
These things are going up no matter what. I would argue there's probably a lot more money to be made if Donald Trump doesn't get in, as he has promised several times now that he's going to end both of these conflicts before he even gets into office. Hand to God, I hope that's true. I'm skeptical on a lot, my friend.
Yeah.
At the same time, these haven't been losers at all. And we've been kind of talking about this. And they have been, if there's a stairway climb that you could look at over the last 12 months, these companies have certainly been that. So what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are you just buy the whole sector. There is nothing that's going to slow this down at this point. You mentioned conflicts. Yeah, we've got conflicts in the Middle East. We've got almost 50% of our Navy over in the Middle East. It's astounding that the assets that the U.S. has deployed in that region, actually, I'm a little bit low on it. It's closer to 60% of our Navy's over there. I don't see anything stopping this right now. Look, both Harris and Trump are both forecasting continued trillion-dollar deficit spending. And again, in the middle of a political campaign, are you going to talk about how you're going to cut? No, neither one of them are talking about that. They're tripping over each other to talk about tax cuts and stimulus. And look, both of these companies have done very well. Okay, Lockheed Martin, LMT is the stock symbol, trade a little bit better than NOC, Northrop Grumman, but you named a few other companies. The defense industry is not slowing down. Russia threats continue. You had Zelensky speaking at the UN. Look, nothing is happening there I haven't seen one evidence of anything that's going to reduce military spending. If anything, it's going to increase. So I don't know. I mean, you never know when things are going to top out. Okay. And generally what happens is people are thinking everything's good. And then boom, all of a sudden you start to get a recession. I got news for you. If a recession hits the country, military stocks will go down too, because they're priced pretty lofty right now.
Oh, they're high. They're big time.
They are high. And these are not cheap stocks. So, but if you look at the conflicts and you say, look, God, the U.S. is deployed everywhere, and people may not realize it, but the U.S. isn't the first or the second largest army in the world anymore. We're number 3. So those are good areas, and I'm not expecting anything. I'm not expecting any crashes. Let's put it to you like that.
We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to get into crypto. I love getting into Bitcoin. It's up, it's down. It's really just around that marker that we've talked about for some time, 60 to 65,000. Gold as well at record highs. We're going to be talking that and a lot more. You're not going to want to miss it. I'm with Mark Schaftlein. This is Making Sense of the Madness, and we'll be back after this.
The Donor Deck represents a groundbreaking independent crowdfunding initiative driven by patriots like you to bring back our esteemed President Donald J. Trump to office. With unwavering passion, we pledge all profits from the sale to MAGA Inc. and Fight Like a Flynn PAC. The exquisitely detailed challenge coin is a timeless collectible to be passed down to generations. It symbolizes your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. Get your Donor Deck now. Go to thepatriot.tv store and click on Donor Deck. Enjoy the magnificent artwork and scripture on each playing card, knowing our appreciation for your continuous dedication to assisting President Trump in his quest to rejuvenate America to its former greatness. You'll get this keepsake collectible challenge coin acknowledging your support for Donald Trump's run back to the White House, and the Donor Deck of 52 exquisite playing cards, plus a beautiful display case to show your challenge coin. Go to thepatriot.tv store and get your Donor Deck now. Attention business owners, are you ready to advertise to millions of loyal patriots ready to buy your products or services? Here is your golden chance to advertise with Jason Bermas and connect with his massive audience on Patriot TV and his incredibly loyal social media followers. As an advertiser on Making Sense of the Madness, you also reach his followers on the top social media sites. As Jason dives into complex current events and conspiracies, offering investigative analysis and thought-provoking discussions to uncover the deeper truths behind the headlines. When you advertise with Jason on Making Sense of the Madness, you're aligning your brand with integrity, loyalty, and a dedication to truth. Jason's audience is passionate, conservative, and committed to the values your business stands for. When given the choice, Jason's followers will buy your products or services over other woke companies. Don't miss this opportunity to elevate your brand with the power of Patriot TV. Reach out to us today at advertise@patriot.tv.
And we are back. We are with Mark Schaftlein. And Mark, I do join you every single Friday on Election Edge. We're less economics there. We're more political. You actually let me rant a little bit more than I probably should. But we do get a full hour together, which is always fun. One of the things we're constantly talking about is Bitcoin, right? Because, look, it is really part of the market as well as gold is. In fact, they're calling it digital gold. Gold at an all-time high. Bitcoin not quite at that all-time high, but in the range, right? It's not too far away. I think it's 63 and change here. So it's down about, 15, 16% from that high. It's dipped within the month down to 53. So there is a lot of volatility there. Maybe not as much volatility in gold. However, the mainstream continues to push people away from gold, and I would argue into the digital world. So what's your take?
Well, let's talk about gold first. Gold's sitting around 2,600 and change. It looks like there's a little bit of resistance here. I agree with some of the analysts, but the funny thing about it is jewelry demand is slowing quite a bit. What does that tell you? That tells you the high-end consumer is pulling back. We already talked about the low-end consumer. Demand for gold coins and gold bars moderating. So demand's got to be coming from somewhere. You can't hit all-time highs while demand for jewelry, gold, and gold bars are going down. That tells me central banks are accumulating gold. As far as crypto goes, boy, here's your risk factors. Let me go over those first, and we'll talk about the opportunities. If we talked about China earlier in the show, if China stimulus does not work, and I have my doubts that it will, and if the U.S., we've already seen it with lower end, we're seeing the upper end cutting back. If the U.S. goes into a recession, and very few people are predicting it, it's not like you can see the flashing yellow or flashing red light coming. Okay. It just sort of all of a sudden demand stops and, people start freaking out. Okay. So if the U.S. economy slows significantly, then you're going to see Bitcoin come down probably 50 or below. I'm talking 50,000 or below. The risk you also have, a lot of Bitcoin is concentrated in Chinese hands. Well, if the Chinese economy doesn't strengthen and they get back to their real growth areas, what's the probability that those Chinese owners of Bitcoin could sell? Those are your risk factors. Now, let's talk about the positive piece here. There's a finite amount. What is it, Jason? 22 million Bitcoins total overall, something like that. So you're not seeing the supply of Bitcoin increase, but you are seeing demand relatively stable. And there's a lot of people out there that are forecasting $100,000 Bitcoin. They said it earlier in the year, it'd be there by the end of the year. I have my doubts about that, but there are people saying 100,000, 200,000 or higher. So it's still a relatively young market, but I do know the laws of economics. When you limit supply and increase demand, prices go up. And there is not a lot of new supply coming on Bitcoin. The wild card, though, is China. A lot of Bitcoin is concentrated in China, and we really don't have a whole lot of sort of visibility into what the Chinese are doing.
I would say this, the right kind of global event, catastrophe. I mean, let's say either of those assassination attempts actually works with Trump. That's the type of panic moment that I think can move cryptocurrency, because that's what we've really seen in the past, right? I mean, during, COVID, you saw a lot of traction on that.
Oh, yeah.
You saw a lot of traction on it once again, once the war in Ukraine heated up. I would argue it's also in the last year that we've talked about it, probably gone from 50 around that stable mark, now up to 60 plus around that stable mark. Still the dips, but a year ago, we were just getting off that, it dipped down below 20, I think, at one point, in quick fashion.
80% crash.
Exactly. And I would also argue you didn't have those moments. God forbid we do have one of those moments. What do you think? Either a moment abroad that would take us further into war, install a Kamala Harris before the election, Donald Trump's no longer with us, something along those lines. What do you think it does not only for the crypto market, but something like gold? Because
crypto and gold would both soar under the circumstances you're talking about there. And look, let's look at this. When we talk about hypotheticals, you got Israel fighting on two fronts right now, possibly three. That's a big deal. You heard Zelensky at the UN talking about how Russia has already taken out 80% of Ukraine's power as we head, towards the fall and the winter. The Russians are increasing the size of their military. So I'm not seeing any evidence whatsoever that we couldn't have something like that. You've heard Trump warn. I mean, we are closer to WW3 than at any time in my lifetime here. And you've got nuclear weapons. Trump says it, and people need to think about it. Zelensky's using drones to attack Moscow. Okay, at a certain point in time. And, the question is, he's asking both the U.S. and Europe for long-range weapons where they can strike deep inside Russia. Well, the Russians have said, you do that, and, we're considering you part of the battle.
And let me say this. What everybody's missing about that little speech, if even you saw it, because they barely played it in the mainstream media, is what was he talking about? The satellite systems. The U.S. satellite systems, the NATO. He's like, these aren't Ukrainian satellite systems. And what I've been harping on, Starlink's highest concentration there. Northrop Grumman are the ones that have partnered with Musk for the new spy satellite network as well. So people better realize, this isn't a game. It goes beyond just the talking points. And you're right. At the debate, Trump's the only person on the stage, not the person he's debating, not the moderators, that once talked about nuclear weapons or the possibility of World War III. I know you got a hard out today, Mark. Let everybody know where they can check out your 2 shows here on Patriot TV.
Election Edge, aired live every day, 6 Eastern, 3 West Coast time, and then we do Schaftlein Report on the weekend. So one final comment, Jason. The Russians are increasing the size of their military. They say it's volunteer. That's BS. They're not increasing the size of their military because, they just want to do it. They've suffered massive casualties. They've covered it up. And I know this from studying history. When the Russians are increasing their military, they're not doing it just to polish it up. So again, thanks for having me on today, Jason. Always enjoyable. And I will see you Friday on Election Edge.
I will see you Friday as well. We're going to take a quick break. Zak Paine is going to join us. We're going to break it all down. You're not going to want to miss it. More Making Sense of the Madness after this.
Former National Security Advisor Lieutenant General Michael Flynn pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV store, a secure, hassle-free shopping experience.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
We are back with Zak Paine. And Zak, we got a great story to lead here. And by great, I mean it's you haven't heard? Now, this story was kind of bizarre yesterday. And I'm going to admit, I haven't delved very deep into it. I have my questions about the whole scenario. So I see this article at the Daily Mail about a New York judge. And at first, it talks about a shootout with police. And then this person who apparently they didn't even have an arrest warrant for. They were coming for an investigation. Whether or not they had a warrant to search the facility, I think is also unclear. But he gets in a shootout with them, is how it's portrayed first. Then that part is taken away, and it's said that there's an incident with another FBI agent, and now it's been changed from a shootout, an incident with an FBI agent, to he shot at the FBI when they came into his home. It's not clear. We haven't seen any body cam footage. Now, the other troubling aspect of this is the guy ends up committing suicide on top of it. Now, again, we're asking questions. I have no idea. I was wondering when I first read this, is this going to be in rapid fashion when we see some body cam footage? Maybe that will actually shed some light on this whole situation. I don't know yet. Here's the thing. He's a retired New York judge. He was a private attorney. He was also on the state Supreme Court there. Yeah. All right. So if you're in New York and you're a judge and you don't have aspirations of really being political beyond that point in some kind of a governor position or senator position, or maybe going to Washington, it doesn't get much bigger than the state Supreme Court, especially in New York State. I mean, they should be headlines everywhere. We should want to see the body cam footage. We should want to know more about the quote-unquote investigation. They're alleging that it's this individual who had $1.9 million in this laundering scheme. I would argue there's a multitude of things you could be involved in via corruption as a judge, especially on that level in New York State. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, when I first heard about this, and Jason, I got to say, you're the first person to bring this to my attention, but I have definitely been following the series of raids that have been going on, not only in New York City, but also across the state. I mean, there was a Chinese spy that was recently caught. Her and her husband had a whole grift operation going on working for the PRC. Mayor Adams, it seems like it's open season on pretty much everybody who works for him. We're talking about foreign money coming in. This judge, I mean, from what I understand, the charges, or the questions rather, that the FBI had for him go back to when he was actually working at the district attorney's office. So I think that was before he was even a judge. So we're probably talking about a years-long trail of crime and corruption that this guy was involved in. And, you know, I mean, the FBI shows up to talk to him. I'm not sure that they were going to do anything other than talk to him. So it looked to me like there was a lot weighing on his conscience. I mean, if the first instinct he had was to open fire on the FBI, then he must have been expecting something like this to happen for a very long time. And maybe it was his connections to existing law enforcement that somehow tipped him off to the fact that they were going to come for him. Or, you know, maybe once we see the body cam footage, we'll see that this FBI agent that was there talking to him was somebody that he had previously been involved with some sort of grift or bribery. I don't know. I mean, quite literally, the possibilities are endless. And when you're talking about the sort of massive criminal network that exists in the state of New York, I mean, quite literally, it could be anything. I mean, is it just bribery? I mean, is it, you know, maybe involvement in organized crime, payoffs? I mean, literally, it could be absolutely anything. And the fact that they're so tight-lipped about it, that really definitely gives me pause. But the proximity to the raids on Eric Adams' people makes me think that there is a much, much, much larger investigation going on here. Either the FBI was going to perhaps shore up some loose ends, or they've been looking at the state of New York for a very long time. And for some reason, it's all culminating right now before the election.
And that kind of brings me to the next story. Diddy. Did Diddy done do it? Look, here's the deal. I think there's varying degrees of what we're dealing with Diddy style. I think that people are kind of running away with different types of conspiracy theories that I think go beyond what's really going on. I think when you look at like someone like Epstein, you're looking like international arms dealing. When you're looking at somebody like Diddy, you're probably talking about also drug running and then small arms, you know, small weapons with his private jet. Okay. So there are parallels. I think that it's on an exponential level when you're talking Epstein, because you're talking about influences in finance and the war machine like you can't imagine. You can only sell so many guns. ICBMs, mwah, they go for big bucos, okay?
Chef's kiss, yeah.
At the same time, when you're talking about cultural significance in the hip-hop world, I think there's always been compromise. And I think this Diddy model may be the same model that we saw with maybe Quincy Jones. I want to remind people that Tupac Shakur's on tape talking about how when he was dating Quincy Jones's daughter, Quincy Jones tried to sleep with him. And, you know, obviously, other than the freak-offs and the baby oil, one of the other aspects of this is, you know, was Diddy having homosexual relationships of power over other people and perhaps even children. As we know, he also had Flavor Camp, and he had, it's hard to believe, but he had Flavor Camp where he was the custodian of young preteen and teenage boys trying to make it in the industry. And there really can be no question that part of this game, especially in regards to Diddy and entertainment, is about power. Just watch Making the Band again. And sure, it seems innocent that the people who are trying to make it in the music industry have to walk 5 miles in the cold to go get Diddy his favorite cheesecake and walk it back. But really think about that for a moment. You know, that's not going to make them a better singer. Is it really going to make them a better individual? Or is it going to let them know who the boss is? I think that's more the reality of the situation. So did Diddy done do it? And why is Dershowitz saying he should make bail? We'll get into that in a moment.
Well, of course, Alan Dershowitz is saying that Diddy should get bail. And Jason, I want to be open here. I think that there is a fair comparison here to suggest that Sean Combs is essentially the Jeffrey Epstein of the hip hop world. Jeffrey Epstein attached to intelligence. Let's not forget who created the hip hop industry and the cultural phenomenon. It was started by the CIA as a psychological operation to demoralize an entire nation of youth and to introduce debauchery and drugs and sexual activity. I mean, this is concurrent with the Iran-Contra affair and the smuggling of cocaine into the United States and the start of the crack epidemic in Los Angeles. I truly think it's all connected. And Sean Combs was involved in what many people have said is a blackmail operation that is very similar to what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. Sure, maybe Sean Combs was a little bit more loosey-goosey with it. Maybe he enjoyed the power dynamic that he was able to control people with, but he was promising people fame and fortune. Jeffrey Epstein would promise girls he was going to make them models. Sean Combs would promise them that he was going to make them singers and stars. There were definitely minors involved on both sides. There's a lot of money involved. Hip hop is the largest musical genre on the planet, maybe next to reggaeton. But here in America, certainly it is the top of the heap. And so you've got so many different famous people, rich and powerful people. The same types of individuals that were gravitating towards Epstein are gravitating towards Sean Combs. People in the music industry, people in Hollywood. Certainly there's going to be business and banking involved there because that is a major component of the record industry. So I think that you're just looking at two sides of the same coin, and it's all going to lead up to the same power players at the top. The information from people being compromised is going to be used by certain individuals. There is a very particular niche for the people who want that information to control it. Certainly Sean Combs wanted it so he could be the power broker of business and industry in Hollywood and in music. But there are also going to be other people who are willing to perhaps pay for that kind of stuff. Let's not forget who kind of mentored Sean Combs. I mean, Clive Davis had a big part in making Sean Combs into who he was. There's a lot of stuff that's been said about Clive Davis as well. The same sorts of claims that have been made. And at the end of the day, it all seems to have the same modus operandi when you get to a certain level of power. It's people exerting sexual influence over others so that they can control them. And oftentimes there is a sort of perverted demonic overtone to all of it. It doesn't really matter where they're at in the world. They all seem to be interested in the same things, and it all comes back to kids, unfortunately.
Well, let me just say this. When we're talking Combs, I think if we do get any revelations of a larger scale ring and his working with entities within law enforcement, I think you're probably going to see informant or asset for the FBI.
Yes.
That is more than likely, I think, as high up on the chain it goes. I think you could even point to the shooting in the club with Shine and J-Lo after the fact, how he was able to use some of those connections, maybe even some of those blackmail apparatuses. I mean, Shine still did time in prison for that shooting, etc. But you got to remember, they also found that gun in his car after the fact with J-Lo. And listen, don't get me wrong, that was still a time where the media reported on those type of things and were pretty big about it. But when you look at what happened to him via law enforcement, it's certainly another question into the fray. When I see Dershowitz actually coming forward and saying he deserves bail, a la the Epstein lawyer himself, that's where I can lean into what you were saying a little bit more. Because there is no doubt to me that Dershowitz is extremely well aware, although he says otherwise, that Jeffrey Epstein was involved in intelligence, either Israeli or in the United States. So what are your thoughts on the Dirty Dersh?
Well, let me say this. Whereas Jeffrey Epstein had multiple passports and was undoubtedly more than just an asset for the Mossad or for CIA or any other intel agency here in the United States, I don't think you're going to find any dual citizenship for Sean Combs. I think that you're right, that this is probably more like a high-level informant thing. He was a useful tool for those agencies, and certainly they would be interested in what he was doing. But the fact that Dershowitz is coming forward, I think that just goes right in line with the sort of I don't know. I guess the legal takes that he always has. I mean, like you said, he defended Jeffrey Epstein. He's as a defense attorney, he's always going to advocate in defense of his clients. There's going to be a lot of people, I think, that are likely going to be ensnared in this. There have been a number of celebrities who have wiped their entire social media presence since Sean Combs was arrested. And they're going to need legal assistance. And Alan Dershowitz seems like probably the number one pick to do that. So this is maybe a bit of an advertisement for his services, because those people are going to need to be spending money to make sure they don't go to prison. And let me just say one final thing. That's exactly it. Yeah, popping corks and, dropping Benjamins. So Sean Combs, I think that Sean Combs is at a level where he's going to be very comfortable giving up what information he does have. The feds have put charges on him that could result in him being in prison for the rest of his life. I want you to consider the way they've gone after him versus the way they've gone after Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell, in both cases at the SDNY, both cases are sex trafficking cases. Ghislaine Maxwell, however, was not charged with sex trafficking, and she really, really should have been. Okay, she's going to get out of prison at some point if she survives, and I think she probably will.
And by the way, they just did upheld
Yes.
that conviction last week, rightfully so. I'm very happy about that.
I have a thought on that too, so let me circle back to that in a moment. But Sean Combs is looking at life in prison. His riches, his property, all of that is up for seizure by the federal government. Okay, civil asset forfeiture. They can come and they can take everything from him. They can also drop a number of even heavier charges on him if he doesn't want to play ball. For some reason, it seems that the SDNY and the government is comfortable going after Sean Combs, and they're comfortable getting whatever his network is. I think that Sean Combs is going to give up as much information as possible so that his children don't end up destitute. So his children don't end up with nothing, homeless, living on the streets. Do they have any skills that you know of? As far as I'm aware, they are just the children of Sean Combs. I don't think they have careers. I don't think that, they have anything to really offer the world. So I think that Sean Combs is going to make sure that either he's able to get out of prison, or at the very least that his children are going to be taken care of for the rest of their lives, because that is in jeopardy right now. Okay, now, Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction being upheld. This is spicy, because this ties back into the case against Jeffrey Epstein. So her legal team's rationale was that the original non-prosecution agreement meant that her trial never should have happened. She never should have went to trial. She never should have been convicted, because clearly she was a co-conspirator of Jeffrey Epstein during that initial phase. So the court finding that non-prosecution agreement is persona non grata. It only referred to that a little bit in Florida, and only that time. The United States is, more of like, just a general descriptor. It doesn't actually mean every crime committed in the United States. So what does that do, Jason? That opens up all of Jeffrey Epstein's other co-conspirators to prosecution. This is a huge deal as far as I'm concerned, because if the federal government and the SDNY wants to go after everybody else, they now have open season to do so. No one is going to be able to look at that non-prosecution agreement, hold it up in court, and say, guess what? I was one of these unnamed co-conspirators that Alexander Acosta and Jeffrey Epstein were talking about all those years ago. All of those people are in jeopardy now. So keep your eyes open.
I'd be looking at Leslie Groth, Sarah Kalin, Nadia Marcinkova, and others. But, she's played ball. Yes, she's tried to get out of prison, but you haven't heard from her. She hasn't named names. I don't think she's in any jeopardy of being, quote unquote, Epsteined, like you said. Unfortunately, if the system works the way it's supposed to, she could be out, 7-8 years, probably somewhere in that marker, on bail or work release, et cetera, et cetera. Let's move on to Infowars.com. It looks like, even though the DOJ stepped in last week, that we are going to get an auction that this auction is now going to take place in November. And essentially in December, the physical auction will begin of the studio and everything there. Now, Roger Stone just put this tweet out, and it does seem like I haven't heard what Jones has to say on this. He was out on the road with Tucker Carlson, etc. I'm sure we're going to learn more about it. But Stone is saying that he has put together a group to buy InfoWars and hire in Alex Jones to run it. Now, the question is that a real possibility that someone comes in here and spends, I don't know about Muskernuts money, $44 billion or whatever, but it's certainly going to have to be a high marker, because I can see somebody else on the opposition buying it just to shut it down and spending billions on it, because this is an information war, and Infowars.com is iconic. Alex Jones has long crossed the threshold into being a cultural figure. No matter whether you love him, hate him, indifferent, think he's funny. I like laughing at night, Zach. And I type in stand-up comedy into YouTube a lot, and I just watch whatever. And just this random guy I came across. It's been up for less than a week, less than 50,000 views. 40 minutes into it, he's got a golden Alex Jones bit for 5+ minutes, and the audience is very responsive. They obviously know who he is. They love it, etc. So what are your thoughts on all of this? I was actually supposed to host the 4th hour today. Got bumped for the Tucker Carlson piece where he spoke there. But I did host on Sunday, did an hour on space. Nobody tells me what to say. I was not kind to the Musker-Do, I must say. But that's what we need. We need platforms where there is discourse even within that arena. Yes, there's an overarching message of questioning everything, doing your own research, holding people to accountability, promoting a constitutional republic. But that doesn't mean we agree all the time and there isn't discourse. And that's why Infowars.com, other than Alex Jones being a lightning rod for that message, is so important.
Yeah, so I think that it is entirely possible that Roger Stone is able to pull this off. But what you said, that was my first reservation as well. There is a distinct possibility that an alternative buyer might step in with Elon Musk style money, simply to purchase InfoWars, to wrap all of its properties and all of its branding in a concrete bundle and drop it in the bottom of the ocean. So then it wouldn't exist anymore. And I do think that would be a shame. No matter what you think about Alex Jones, I mean, I think it's undeniable that he and his platform have done an incredible amount of good by bringing news, information, the work of people like yourself, Jason, and opening the eyes of a lot of people, even if people don't keep listening to Alex Jones. I mean, he can either be someone that you really resonate with and you end up being a daily listener and you watch all of the documentaries, or it might just be a gateway for people, opening their eyes and putting them on their own path to start doing their own research. So I think it would be a real shame if the brand and the channel was to be shut down entirely. And, I'm wondering, how much does that encompass? I mean, he's got his own video platform online. I mean, is that part of InfoWars? I mean, is that one of the things that would potentially be in danger of getting shut down? I mean, obviously all of these things are probably going to be answered, but if it does happen, then it's going to be a real shame. And I hope that that Roger can go ahead and pull it together. I think that, Elon and Alex have, seemed to have been at odds in the past. I mean, like Elon has had negative things to say, but Elon's come a long way in the last couple of years. And it seems like the scales have completely been taken off of his eyes. And, obviously he's a businessman, Jay. I mean, he wants to make money and he's looking to do it in the best way possible for himself and his companies. But I think he's done a really good job in balancing the need for access to free speech, freer perhaps speech, not really free speech, and also information. He's sort of bridged that gap in a way that most people never have. And I mean that in regards to a platform this size, I mean, like, think about the amount of money he spent on Twitter I can't imagine that it's really been a profitable venture for him. I mean, it's brought him more headaches than anything else. I mean, it's brought the speculation of the DOJ and all of these left-wing organizations and NGOs, other platforms trying to, shut him down and to shut down his companies. I mean, Tesla was a darling of the green energy sector. And then all of a sudden, Elon Musk starts questioning things. And people want to destroy his company.
Well, let me just say this, though. I mean, Northrop Grumman's doing great, and they're building the new spy satellite network with him. Okay, and he's launching Polaris Dawn. Let's just say, color me skeptical. We've got to take a quick break, my friend. We've got to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We got Zak Paine, redpillnews78.com is where you can find him. Final segment of Making Sense of the Madness after this.
Don't let them win. Patriot TV is committed to delivering the truth. America's new network for Patriots is growing fast, and we'd love you to join us as a member of Patriot TV. Your support makes it possible for us to continue to deliver unbiased reporting, thought-provoking discussions, and insights you won't find anywhere else. From in-depth interviews to behind-the-scenes footage, Patriot TV brings you closer to the voices shaping our nation's future. Whether it's political developments, cultural shifts, or global affairs, Patriot TV keeps you informed and empowered. As a member of Patriot TV, you'll get perks like personal invitations to exclusive Patriot TV events, where you can gather and network with like-minded Americans. We'll also host online events throughout the year with General Flynn, who's committed to host live Q&A webinars where callers like you can ask him questions and get real answers. Access to these events will be members only, so go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. We have a great membership option starting at just $9.99 a month, or save with our annual membership for only $99, or take advantage of the best value, the 2-year membership for just $159. Go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. Do your part to make sure the truth gets out to all Patriots and help ensure future programming. Become a member today. Just go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member, join today. Attention business owners, are you ready to advertise to millions of loyal Patriots ready to buy your products or services? Here is your golden chance to advertise with Jason Bermas and connect with his massive audience on Patriot TV and his incredibly loyal social media followers. As an advertiser on Making Sense of the Madness, you also reach his followers on the top social media sites. As Jason dives into complex current events and conspiracies, offering investigative analysis and thought-provoking discussions to uncover the deeper truths behind the headlines. When you advertise with Jason on Making Sense of the Madness, you're aligning your brand with integrity, loyalty, and a dedication to truth. Jason's audience is passionate, conservative, and committed to the values your business stands for. When given the choice, Jason's followers will buy your products or services over other woke companies. Don't miss this opportunity to elevate your brand with the power of Patriot TV. Reach out to us today at advertise@patriot.tv.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
And we are back. Now, Zach, we've only got about, I think, 4 minutes left in the broadcast, and we're not going to be able to hit everything that I wanted to. But I do want to give props to my buddy really quick. And this is a feel-good story for myself. Some months ago, during Iowa primary season, when Donald Trump was in Iowa, he saw and met my buddy who had done this painting. And here it is right here. It is a painting of Donald Trump. He was extremely impressed with it. He had his people get his number, and yes, Donald Trump actually bought the painting.
Wow.
And here he is commenting on it right here.
I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent, but they don't get it. No. Yeah. This guy is unbelievable.
So
I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent,
again,
but they don't get it.
Really,
This guy is unbelievable.
Unbelievable. I love it. I love every
do
bit
too.
about it. It makes me like Donald Trump even more. It isn't except my buddy's a great painter. Got some real great murals here in the Quad Cities. But the dude made good on his promise. You know, it's on tape. He wasn't bull snotting them. I just want to get a quick reaction, then we'll get to more serious stuff.
I love Donald Trump. Okay. And I absolutely love that he would support an artist like this. Yes, it's a picture of him, but it truly was something special. I mean, I would love to get a better look at that painting, and I can't wait to see it hanging in the halls of Mar-a-Lago. I mean, what an honor. You know, Donald Trump, a lot of people don't know who the real Donald Trump is. You know, I mean, you see how he's portrayed on social media, in the news, and a lot of people tend to believe that that's who he is. I mean, even when he's up on stage at the rallies, you know, he's performative. I mean, he is doing so much to help this country, and he's sacrificed so much. And I can't imagine Kamala Harris stopping by a supporter's home and purchasing a painting that somebody did of her. I can't imagine anybody even wanting to do a painting of Kamala Harris. She'd be cackling and, you know, like with her hands up in the air.
Hey, dude, Wicked is about to hit theaters. And I'm just saying, you know, that's Trump as, you know, like a 1776 style patriot. If you culturally appropriated her, remember, the Wicked Witch is now a black woman, right? She's pretending to be black. She can also pretend to be green. Maybe I'll talk to my buddy Cavallo, who just did that painting, and he does the Kamala embarrassed painting as the Wicked Witch of the West. I think it's pure gold all the way around. Brother,
Let's go for it.
I wanted to get to the sum of the future. So important we didn't touch it. The keynote AI speech by Sundar Pichai. You should also watch Anthony Blinken. He wasn't playing the guitar, but he sure had something to say over there. I wanted to get into Hezbollah firing ballistic missiles, the ground war that seems to be happening that we've been talking about on Lebanon. But guess what? We don't have time for any of it. So quickly, what would you like to leave the audience with, and where can they check out your stuff, brother?
Well, thank you, as always, for having me, Jason. You guys can watch me on my own channel, Red Pill 78 on Rumble, my website, redpill78news.com, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m., Friday and Saturday at 9 p.m., and then also Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday on Badlands Media. Check it out, Badlands Media. I think it's, I don't know, I can't remember the website name, but anyways, Badlands Media on Rumble.
All right, brother. We love you, and we love you guys. Guys, not about left or right, always about right and wrong. We will see you on the flip side.